Action.
All right.
Corey.
It's a buzz.
Matt, nice
How are
to
you,
meet you,
man?
buddy.
All good.
From my understanding, I mean, I know you went through a lot as like a kid, and I guess
Yeah.
like wondering, has some of that, have you seen that surface as you've gotten older and
I mean, a lot of it came out in the music. You
Yeah.
know, obviously, when you kind of live on the streets, it's the more visceral sound that appeals to you. You know,
Yeah.
whether it was punk or hip hop, even like the early hip hop had that punk feel. Thrash metal had that punk feel. That was the stuff that appealed to me. It was just never angry enough. It was never, I don't want to say violent enough, but it didn't have the energy that I was looking for that it just made me want to run until my muscles fell off,
Right.
you know?
Who was it that really was that stability for you?
My grandmother.
Was your
Yeah. Thelma Taylor, the patron saint of okra and scrapple on the south side of Des Moines. She was my rock, man,
Yeah.
you know, because we moved all over, but we would always kind of end up back in the general area of Iowa, you know. So when I finally had enough and moved to Des Moines to live with my grandmother, like that was kind of my home base, you know. And she took me in, this insane, fucked up kid, but she also didn't try to control me, which I would think was good, you know. She let me kind of get it out, and she also encouraged me to pursue music, and you know, she bought me my first guitar. So she was like,
She's like that loving guiding force.
yeah, man. Like she was the one thing in my life that I knew would always be there.
Yeah.
And I mean, to this day, that when I think of, you know, feeling good and whole, that's the feeling I get when I think about my grandmother.
Yeah. And you were saying that your grandfather was in the military.
Yes. Yeah.
Is he the one that kind of provided that structure for you as well?
No. He was the antithesis, actually. I mean, it's one of the reasons why I ended up starting the Taylor Foundation is because my memories of my grandfather are very fractured. Over the years, I only really knew about him through other people. My grandmother never talked about him. My mom talked about him because they were close. But my memories of him were of him basically being homeless. You know, when I would see him, he would always be in different houses, and he was almost always in people's basements. He was kind of living out of basements. He only had like a handful of stuff with him.
Yeah.
He spent a lot of time at the VA hospital. He struggled with alcoholism because of the PTSD that he experienced from the Korean War. And my grandmother actually told me about that later, after he'd actually passed away.
So you didn't know about that part?
No, I didn't find out about it until actually after he died, because the last time I saw him, I was 16, and my grandmother was like, "Your grandfather's in the hospital and he's not going to make it." And you know, this is a person I'd never had a relationship with, so I was almost ambivalent about it. I was like, so, you know, like this has nothing to do with me. And then she took me down to say goodbye. And at that point, he had cleaned up his life. He had been sober for 5 years, and he had been with this wonderful woman who had helped him, you know, get on his feet. And yet the damage had already been done. The cirrhosis had already gotten him, and it's one of the most stark images I've ever seen. He was pallid. His skin looked like milk carton material, and he didn't recognize anyone. He didn't recognize my grandmother. Like he didn't recognize his wife. He didn't recognize my mom, who he was super close with. And even though I had never really had a relationship with this man, it affected me so much. It broke my heart, especially hearing about it later.
Yeah.
I was really close with, you know, my grandmother's family, and they're the ones who kind of filled me in that my grandfather was in the Korean War, and when he came back, he was never the same. Yeah, and I mean, they were very
Because of like the PTSD and the stuff that he'd seen and gone through.
He'd seen some serious shit, man.
Yeah.
And when there's no real word for it back then, as each war kind of came and went, it compounded until it actually tried to get to the source
Yeah.
of what it was. You know,
Right.
they kept renaming it, but they couldn't figure out how to treat it.
Yeah.
Because there was such a stigma on asking for help, especially as a man back then, that the people were just kind of left to their own devices, you know? So it's hard to hear that story and then realize that had there been, you know, a way for people to get help, maybe that would have changed the course of my family's history.
Yeah.
You know? Over the course of my career, I've met so many wonderful people, not only from the military, but from law enforcement, from emergency services, who have dealt with so many insanely traumatizing experiences. And they've told me over and over and over again that my music, our music, has helped them get through, has helped them with, you know, for some reason, our message and the things that I've gone through has helped them. You know, it's helped them relate, and it's made them feel like they're not alone, like somebody gets it, you know?
Yeah.
So the Taylor Foundation is actually dedicated to that, is raising money and raising awareness and helping organizations all over America for right now, trying to get the help to those places that really need the help, you know, the ones that sometimes get, you know, kind of lost in the cracks. And that to me is the most important thing.
You know, how have you been able to overcome some of those issues that you have? Have you ever gone to therapy? Have you ever?
I do a lot of therapy. Yeah. I'm actually between therapists right now. So because it's, you know, it's sometimes one will take you so far and then you kind of have to find another one, you know, and that's just part of the process, you know. Once I get past what we talked about, the stigma of I don't need help, you know, I can figure this out. Right. Once you get past that and you realize that you know, even a soldier can't do it on its own. It takes an army, you know. Even in that sense, you can't do it yourself. You have to have some help, you know. Once you figure that out and you embrace that, you know. So my first kind of faltering steps took me into some self-realization about myself because of the things that I had gone through, whether it was being homeless or the abuse or, you know, the addictions. You know, like all of the things that I had gone through in my life were actually controlling a lot of the things that I was doing for my future, you know, and holding me back in a lot of ways because I hadn't talked about it and because I hadn't let go of a lot of that pain, you know. Slowly but surely through therapy and through doing the work and through doing the various processes that people have to go through to kind of accept what has happened. It's been good, man, and it's made me a better father. It's made me a better husband. It's made me a better friend, and it has made me accept the flaws of people who I love and realize that that's one of the things that I love about them. You know, when you're dealing with, you know, trauma like that, you kind of back yourself into a corner and you realize that you're lashing out at people for who they are. Yeah. And you don't have to do that. You could. It's okay to be flawed.
It's like once you deal with your own issues, you become more empathetic
to
other people and their issues.
That's exactly it. Yeah. I've seen it a million times, man, where people come back and they go, you know what, I was so angry and so bitter and so just kind of broken. But once I started talking, I started putting the pieces together. And once I started kind of following through on the steps that I was trying to work myself, whether it's, you know, a 12-step program or, you know, processes that a therapist kind of puts you through and makes you understand why you're doing it. Yeah. Once you kind of rebuild yourself, you realize you kind of like one of the best versions of yourself, because now that pain is not what defines you. It's just a part of who you were, you know? And it's, to me, that's the message that I'm trying to get out there, is that this, you know, looking for therapy and looking for help does not make you weak at all, you know? And you can be a better person on the other side for it.
What was it that you would, I guess, consider your rock bottom and helped you to kind of, I guess, be like, this is my taking the first step toward becoming better and healing from some of the stuff that I've dealt with?
I mean, I had a few, to be honest, man. Yeah, because I mean, I had one when I was 16, and I OD'd, and I woke up in a dumpster, in Waterloo. Yeah, I'd kind of been tossed in. Some friends had basically abandoned me because they thought I was dead, and they threw me. So and I woke up by whatever grace of whatever. I woke up and realized what had happened. That was when I quit doing drugs. My next one was actually 2003 when I quit drinking the first time. The first time I realized that I had an issue with drinking because of the anger and because of the issues that I'd had, you know, whether it was growing up or just all the things that I dealt with. And I mean, and that was another dark one. It's like I had friends of mine just telling me that I was out of control and I wasn't listening, you know? And I would wake up in strangers' houses and not know how I got there, you know? I had to have 2 bottles of Jack Daniels at all times. And they had to be there in the morning and there at night. Wow. And then all during the day I was going places and drinking. So it was...
So what made you want to take that step, though, toward, like, correcting some of these patterns and some of these behaviors that you find yourself falling into?
It was a handful of things. Yeah. It was a realization that I wasn't who I wanted to be. Mm-hmm. I wasn't even close to the person who I had been.
And mind you, is this while you're dealing with all the success too?
Yeah. This is in the heart of it. This was right when we were recording Volume 3.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, we're starting to really kind of get to this echelon that none of us had really experienced.
Yeah.
I was completely unavailable for my first wife. Mm-hmm. My son had just been born, and his first year was a blur for me. Like, I mean, there were moments of true joy being with him as a father, and you know, but for the most part, I was just unavailable, you know. And it was actually one of the guys in the band that turned to me and went, "Dude, you're not even living your life right now. You're just blindly wandering through the hallways of your house."
Yeah.
And that's it, you know. And it wasn't until I really took a second and looked at how I was not only hurting myself, but hurting the people I loved, and the fact that I was basically turning my back on a life that had potential.
Yeah.
And, you know, people who I would die for when I was sober.
Yeah.
That it really got to the point where I was like, okay, these are the steps I need to take to get there, you know. And it took a couple times, but, you know, I've been sober now for 12 years, and you know, I mean, and it's obviously it's a day at a time process, but I have so much to live for and so many things that make me want to stay where I'm at, and it just keeps making me dedicate myself to being better, you know.
That's awesome, man. Also getting sober, getting into therapy, all this, it was kind of like a mix of all of these that really helped set you on like the path.
Yeah, man. Yeah, there was no one fix, you know. There was no one right way to do it. It took a combination of a lot of things, you know. It took a combination of realizing things about myself that I didn't want to realize, you know, that, you know, I have a tendency to be very extreme, and I have a very addictive personality that can lead me down the trail to rack and ruin. And once you kind of realize that about yourself, you can spot the signs, so you can kind of get hold of it quicker. I feel like I've gotten a better hold on that stuff in my life. Yeah. And, you know, it doesn't always work, but you just have to kind of keep committing yourself to it, you know? Yeah. And it's not enough to do it for your family and stuff. You have to do it for yourself, you know? It's that selflessness, or that stoic selflessness, that can get you into trouble in the first place. Yeah. Where that stoic selflessness is the reason why you didn't go to therapy in the first place. Now there's also that step of that stoic selflessness that makes you go, well, you know what, I'm doing. It's almost like that martyrdom syndrome, where you're just like, I'm doing this for my family and nobody else. You have to do it for yourself. Yeah. You have to get back to a place where you realize that you care about yourself, and that you like the person who you are, to keep going, to keep that that path going, because that reinforces everything that your family loves about you.
Right.
And if you weren't worth loving, they wouldn't be there.
Yeah.
You know? So it's a strange balance of self-love and selfless love that you have to find in your life. You know? So you have to find the courage to kind of fight those addictions and pull yourself up and realize that you're worth saving.
Yeah.
That's really the message that it comes down to, is that you are worth saving. Your life is worth saving. Your life is worth you saving. And once you realize that, it's okay to ask for help, man. You know, he couldn't do it on his own. I couldn't do it on my own. And it's okay. And the thing that really pains me is that my grandfather had gotten it together, you know? Like, he had found this woman who was with him to the day he died. She was right there, you know?
Yeah.
And he, you know, but the damage had already been done, you know? And that to me is just such a bittersweet, you know? It's one of those things, it's just like, God, if I had just gotten there a little quicker, if I had just started a little sooner, you know? Obviously, you can't rewrite history, but what you can do is you can start sooner than later.
Yeah.
And realize that, you know, that may be a cautionary tale, but it doesn't have to be the way that it ends, you know? A lot of people think that the Taylor Foundation is named after me. It's not. It's named after him.
Really?
Yeah. It's because he's the reason my last name is Taylor. Like, he was the patriarch of the family. I mean, other than my mom and then my kids, we're the only ones that have the name Taylor.
Really?
You know, like, yeah, or my uncle as well. But he's, you know, everything came from my grandfather, you know, and for better or for worse. So my goal, my mission, basically, is to get money to the people who need it, you know, to the organizations, to the groups who need it, and not just on a national level, but on a community to community basis.
Yeah.
You know, to me, it seems like anytime somebody's trying to do some good, whether it's bureaucracy or red tape, the money that can do some good never gets to the people who can do the most good. So for me, one of the reasons why I'm doing this in every city is to kind of start a network and find all these places so I can make sure that the money that I raise gets to this place and gets to that place, gets to Friends of Firefighters, gets to the Liberty House, gets to Operation Stand Down. It's important for them to know that somebody is thinking about them. They're not just a name on a list on a national registry. They are someone, they're a human being, and somebody is there and is looking to do everything that he or she can to get the help to them.
Yeah.
And that's my goal. The only thing I want to do is help. And that's all I've ever wanted to do. So my plan, you know, and obviously the best way to make God laugh is to announce your plans out loud, but my plan is to raise this money during this tour, take half of it immediately and split it up with the places who I've been, like the people I've talked to, and just get it to them as soon and as quickly as we can. And then whatever's left, we just use that as the foundation to raise more. We cover the bills, we pay people who are working for it, but the money itself gets to the people who need it. We are very blessed in the fact that people have really been reaching out and have really been donating, and even in a time where it's hard to make ends meet, man, people see that, you know, what the goal is, man, and they've gone above and beyond, and I'm incredibly grateful.